wrote a memo to the president. So I thought, let me put on my Roger Stone glasses and let's read this bitch. All right? Oh, here we go. Mr. President, events unfolding in the nation's capital, inflamed by the steady stream of truly alarming totalitarian rhetoric from Democrat politicians, are making abundantly clear what the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security have in store under a President Joe Biden and a Congress controlled by Joe Biden's Democrat cohorts. Any challenge to the results of the 2020 election, even those made pursuant to the United States Constitution, is now to be considered sedition. Any person who makes or has made such a challenge, to include members of Congress, is to be deemed a domestic terrorist. Under sweeping anti-terrorism provisions passed under George W. Bush, many which are patently antithetical to the spirit and letter of our Constitution, but which were nonetheless rushed into law under consistently abused pretext of national security, federal law enforcement officials are empowered to conduct warrantless searches of all communications and without probable cause, indefinitely detain and secretly interrogate any person targeted for investigation under these statutes. Your supporters will be rounded up simply because they dared question the heist of the 2020 election, because we both knew that you won a majority of the legal votes cast. Big. The agency, which would serve as the instrument to this effort to target and ultimately destroy the lives of anyone who dares question the validity of the 2020 elections, will be the radical left-wing Democrat-controlled government of the District of Columbia. Criminal charges brought by the D.C. government are actually prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. In other words, the same office from which the corrupt government attorneys conducted partisan-tainted criminal prosecutions against myself, Paul Manafort, General Michael Flynn, and others singled out as targets of Robert Mueller's special counsel Russian collusion witch hunt. Remember that? Ensuring the success of any partisan persecution conducted by the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, such cases are heard in the U.S. District for the District of Columbia. Out of all federal district courts in America, this is easily the most biased, politically compromised venue of all, with more partisan zealots on the bench than all other venues combined, and that's including the Ninth Circuit. Do you know what those fruits and nuts are doing out there in California? That wasn't in there. But judicial bias is just the beginning, as this court routinely conducts cases tainted by stacked juries, arbitrary rulings hostile to any political disfavored defendant, gross prosecutorial abuses, blatant conflicts of interest, and a routine disregard for even the most egregious instances of juror misconduct, all of which inure to the detriment of any defendant pursued for political motives. I know about all of this firsthand, probably better than anyone in America, except perhaps General Michael Flynn. As if the D.C. District Court is not terrible enough as a judicial killing ground for anyone who dares cross the leftist Democrat power structure in Washington, D.C., the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is a reliable rubber stamp for whatever partisan biases are inflicted below. Like the District Court, the Federal Appeals Court in D.C. is the single most politicized and radical left-wing court of its type anywhere in this country. It has an unparalleled, not undisputed record of flouting both the Constitution and the law in its heavily politicized decisions. No Trump supporter will ever be acquitted in the D.C. Court or Court of Appeals. Fun fact, they have been. I don't think Roger knew that, of course, was going to happen at the time of this writing, but, we continue. At risk of facing a rigged federal criminal prosecution in D.C. for daring challenge the 2020 election outcome are members of Congress like Matt Gaetz, Andy Biggs, Louis Gorman, Jim Jordan, Mo Brooks, Paul Gosar, as well as Ted Cruz and good old Josh Hawley. It wasn't good old. Every House Republican should be pardoned except the 10 deserters. The recent placement of elected members on Congress on a no-fly list enforced by the TSA at every airport in America is absolute proof that the corrupt left-wing zealots in positions of authority intend to impede the travel of duly elected representatives of the people, despite they having been neither charged nor convicted of any crime. This coming new and far more extreme witch hunt, exploiting extraordinarily broad prosecutorial powers that effectively nullify all of the constitutional safeguards due to any citizen under the presumption of innocence, can only be stopped if the president issues pardons to all those individuals at risk. The president's constitutional pardon power is absolute and incontrovertible, capable of being used whether or not there has been a prosecution for the pardon conduct. Further, it is categorically false and unsupported claim that a U.S. citizen must be formally charged or convicted as a prerequisite for executive clemency, such as a pardon. The Ford pardon of former President Richard M. Nixon, my good buddy, has demonstrated without any successful challenge in any court that the president has the sole authority to pardon any individual, quote, for crimes he committed or may have committed, end quote, which is precisely the language that must be used by White House lawyers in a series of pardons that are now imperative to protect a broad swath of Americans who had the audacity to support Donald Trump for president. Mr. President, F your lawyers. Oh, if your lawyers tell you the paperwork cannot be done on time, that's not true. Each pardon is one sentence long, a la Nixon. The president, radical lawless American left, is now scheming to inflict in a grotesque subversion of our Constitution the rule of law and justice itself. I don't know why that's just randomly thrown in the middle of this memorandum, but okay, it's Roger Stone. The president's pardons in this regard should not only include members of Congress and prominent members of his campaign, but also activists, organizers, and major donors and fundraisers. People like Carlos Garvidia, Stephen Brown, your Labor guy, Andy Kawaja, Karen Giorno, Scott Robinson, Sam Sharma, Joel Greenberg, Stephen Michael Alford. Again, I have no clients per se. These are just people I know have busted their ass to help you get elected president. Pardon people who worked for you, fought for you, organized for you, donated to you, raised money for you. People you met but whose names you never knew. I reiterate that I am not compensated to push a pardon for anyone and point out loyal Trump supporters who deserve clemency. A narrow pardon of Trump family members plus Rudy looks political. The pardon for the guts of your movement from Witch Hunt 2 is to thumb your nose at these bastards. That's what he wrote, and that's what I shall read. I also think you should continue your established precedent of pardoning some important Americans posthumously, as you did with the boxer Jack Johnson. I would pardon the first black Secret Service agent, Abraham Bolden, who was framed for refusing to change his testimony in the Kennedy assassination investigation. I have long advocated for a pardon for Marcus Garvey, the early civil rights leader who was railroaded by the FBI. Look at me being all generous and everything. I would also advocate a pardon for Demetrius Flannery, known as Big Meech. Every black person in America knows Big Meech, and that he's been screwed by some capitalized dirty cops. Once a mafia gang leader and convicted only of financial crimes, Flannery is a born-again Christian who languishes in prison while everyone else convicted of the same crime and in the same case who got the exact same sentence in prison has been released. In prison, Big Meech sold his life rights to rapper-producer 50 Cent for $5,000, who then sold them to Starz Television for $30 million. 50 Cent retracted his endorsement of you, the prick. You will be a hero in Black America. Hell yes, I would pardon Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. They are persecuted because they expose the same people who attempted the Russia collusion hoax, the Ukraine hoax, the last phony impeachment, and are now pushing you're their new phony impeachment. Guess what? He had a hand in all of the things he packed into that sentence. How clever of Roger. How clever to crime out in the open. Correct some of the earliest prosecutorial misconduct by the dirtiest cop, Andrews Weissman. Andrews Weissman, there's two of him now, so he's doubly trouble. By pardoning Michael Sessa and Victor Orion, who Weissman sent to prison for the last 30 years because Weissman lied about an FBI informant in a famous mob case. We both know Weissman really ran the vicious Mueller witch hunt. Hell pardon not only Gates, Brooks, Biggs, Gosar, Jude, Jordan, Cruz, and Hawley, but every Republican member of either House or Senate. Boy, he's getting a little sloppy down here at the end of the memo. Oh, every Republican of either House or Senate who voted for you. Pardon the movement. Give the deep state the finger. Among those who could be targeted for such prosecution are prominent Trump supporters, such as former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump Jr., and others in your circle. Yes, I would pardon them all. You could also pardon both me and Bernie Kerik in case they want to designate us as a domestic terrorists, because we both said they stole the election since we were both pardoned. It is time, Mr. President, for you to use his, maybe yours, constitutional authority to protect the America First movement from the diabolical, underhanded lawfare assault that the radical, lawless American left is now scheming to inflict in a grotesque subversion of our Constitution, the rule of law, and justice itself on your supporters. I thank you again, although I think he meant to say thank you again, for saving my life, and Nydia, my wife, sends her love. Call me if you wish to discuss at a blacked out number. Roger. P.S. I expected them to take your Twitter away, but pulling the PGA out of Bedminster is bullshit. Scene. Thank you, Roger Stone, for sharing all your inner thoughts in a memorandum to the former president. We certainly appreciate it, but we really hope that you spend the rest of your miserable fucking life in prison. Thank you. Good night.